There comes a point when your own thoughts start sounding suspicious. After years of gaslighting, even simple decisions feel dangerous. You replay conversations in the shower and traffic before sleep. Not because you're dramatic, because your reality kept getting edited. They denied what happened, twisted what you meant, questioned your memory. Eventually, you stopped arguing and started doubting yourself. You learned to scan faces before trusting your instincts. You learned hesitation like a survival skill, not a personality trait. Maybe it was a partner who rewrote every fight. Maybe it was a parent who called your pain disrespect. Maybe it was a boss who changed expectations, then blamed you. Maybe it was a friend who smiled, planting confusion. Wherever it happened, the damage sounds the same inside. You stopped feeling certain, even when you were right. And that is what gaslighting steals first. Not your voice, but your trust in hearing it. The wound is deeper than self-doubt. It is self-betrayal trained through years of repetition. You were taught that your discomfort meant overreacting. You were taught their version deserved more loyalty than your own. So you explained longer, apologized faster, and checked yourself constantly. You treated certainty like something you had to earn. You began collecting proof for feelings that should have been enough. Screenshots, dates, texts, tones, tiny details, all of it. Not because you were obsessive, but because your reality kept getting challenged. Evidence became your substitute for inner safety. Gaslighting trains you to distrust the alarm before the fire. By the time you react, you're already defending yourself. That is why recovery feels strange. You're not just healing hurt, you are relearning orientation. You are learning that confusion was not insight. It was exposure to a person invested in your uncertainty. But here's what most people never realize about this pattern. The confusion was never accidental, even when it looked casual. When someone keeps shifting facts, motives, and meanings, they are shifting ground. Unstable ground makes you easier to control. Your exhaustion was useful to them too. Tired people stop investigating early and start surrendering. Your over-explaining was useful too. The longer you explained, the more material they had to twist. And when you finally snapped, they pointed at your reaction. Then they called that reaction the whole story. Anger from a gaslighter often means loss of control. Your clarity threatens the version of reality protecting their access. This is why healing can feel almost embarrassing at first. You notice how often you second-guess ordinary moments. You stand in a grocery aisle doubting your own preference. You draft texts, delete them, then apologize for existing. You ask trusted people, was that rude? About everything. Inside, you're begging for borrowed certainty. Then shame arrives and whispers that you should be over it. But healing from distortion is not weakness. It takes time to trust a mind that was repeatedly punished. It takes repetition to feel safe inside yourself again. The first stage is recognition. You start noticing how often confusion appears around specific people. Your body knows before your mind admits it. Tight chest, racing thoughts, mental fog, sudden self-censorship. You leave their calls feeling smaller than before. You leave ordinary conversations with yourself on trial. That pattern matters more than their excuses. Healthy conflict can hurt, but it does not erase your center. This is the part most therapy never addresses. Some situations require strategy, not direct confrontation. You do not need to present a case to someone committed to distortion. You need to protect your clarity first. Sometimes the strongest sentence is simply, "That is not true." No debate, no essay, no courtroom performance. Sometimes the strongest move is nonverbal. Pause before responding and do not rescue the silence. A gaslighter wants your nervous system activated. A calm pause breaks the rhythm they depend on. The next stage is grief, and many people resist it. You grieve time lost, confidence lost, versions of yourself lost. You grieve the conversations that never happened honestly. You grieve how often you abandoned your own perception. And grief can look like anger, numbness, or strange relief. All of it belongs in recovery. Then comes the stage that scares people most. You start seeing old patterns everywhere, including inside yourself. Not because you became toxic, but because survival leaves echoes. You may over-explain before anyone even questions you. You may defend yourself against accusations nobody made yet. You may hear attack where there is only disagreement. That does not mean you are broken. It means your system learned to prepare for impact. Picture this. You're standing in front of someone you used to trust. They say, "You're remembering it wrong again." The old version of you starts scrambling for proof. The healing version notices the scramble and stops. The healing version hears the sentence underneath the sentence. It sounds like, "Leave your reality and enter mine." And that is the turning point. You realize trust in yourself will not return through their permission. It returns when you stop asking them to certify your experience. It returns when your inner witness matters again. That can feel cold at first. Really, it is the beginning of loyalty to yourself. If you felt this way, you are not broken. You are waking up from prolonged psychological fog. Waking up is not peaceful in the beginning. It is disorienting, because false stability is still stability. The familiar chaos once felt like home. Calm can feel suspicious when drama trains your nervous system. So the next stage of recovery is tolerance. You build tolerance for steadiness, not just intensity. You let silence exist without filling it with self-accusation. You let a simple no stand on its own. You stop writing speeches to justify boundaries. You say less, not more, and watch what happens. Healthy people may not love every boundary, but they can handle one. Toxic people treat your boundary like an attack. That distinction changes everything. It helps you stop confusing resistance with passion or volatility with honesty. A boundary is not the same as control. You are not forcing others. You are defining your participation. What comes next is the specific phrase that ends their power. It is small, plain, and incredibly difficult. "I'm not discussing this." That sentence becomes powerful when you actually simply stop discussing it. Not with new evidence, not with better wording, not with tears. Especially not with tears they have studied. Gaslighters often bait you back into the maze. Fake misunderstanding is just another door into exhaustion. Pretending not to remember is not innocence. It is often avoiding accountability while making you prove the obvious again. Stay with me here. This next part will explain something you felt but never been able to articulate. Pause for a moment if this is landing in real time. You may know who this reminds you of. In the comments below, share one pattern you finally recognized. Keep it brief, but make it honest. Maybe it was denial, blame shifting, or going cold after boundaries. Maybe it was being called cruel for telling truth. Your comment might help someone else name their confusion tonight. Sometimes recognition starts when another person puts words around it. All right, let's keep going, because rebuilding self-trust happens through action, not insight alone. One of the first tools is a private reality journal, not for obsession, but for orientation. Write what happened, what was said, and how your body felt. Over time, patterns become harder to erase. This journal is not there to convince them. It is there to reconnect you with your own continuity. Another tool is reducing live debates with unsafe people. Gaslighting thrives in fast, slippery conversations. Text when necessary, summarize briefly, and keep your tone flat. Clarity grows when fewer words are available to weaponize. If they call demanding immediate answers, try this instead. "My answer is the same." Then stop talking. You do not owe a fresh explanation for every wave of pressure. Repetition is their tactic, not your obligation. Another tool is borrowing structure, not certainty. Use routines until your instincts feel steady again. Eat at regular times, sleep consistently, and make small decisions quickly. Order the meal you want without pulling the table. Trust grows through tiny kept promises to yourself. Not dramatic breakthroughs, but accumulated evidence of self-loyalty. In the next minute, I'll share the exact response that disarms them. But first, notice where they usually catch you. They catch you when you feel guilty. They catch you when you want to seem fair. Guilt trips are often attempts to restore lost access through emotion. If shame opens the door, they walk back in. That is why your response must be simple. "That doesn't work for me." No defending, no decorating. If they accuse you of being selfish, let the accusation hang. Do not rush to soften your no. Their discomfort is not proof of your wrongdoing. Sometimes it is just the sound of lost control. Another powerful tool is witness selection. Stop taking your most fragile truths to people who enjoy your confusion. Choose one grounded person who does not rush, mock, or reinterpret you. Borrow calm, not verdicts. A healthy person listens to understand your experience. A toxic person listens to gather information or find leverage. That difference matters when you are rebuilding discernment. Not everyone deserves access to your raw process. Practice ending circular conversations early and calmly. I already answered that. Then return to silence again. Silence can be healthy or manipulative depending on intent. Here, silence protects clarity instead of punishing someone else. If they escalate after you go calm, decode the reaction accurately. Their anger may be panic wearing a louder face. Smear campaigns often begin when private control stops working. If they cannot manage you directly, they manage your image. So if mutual friends suddenly act concerned, pay attention. Concern can be care or it can be reconnaissance. You do not need to defend yourself everywhere at once. Truth survives without a traveling presentation. Choose where to speak, where to document, and where to disengage. Strategy protects energy that panic would waste. If you've been waiting for an apology to feel whole, hear this clearly. Healing doesn't require their apology. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can release obsession and still refuse renewed access. Picture this. An ex returns months later sounding softer than ever. They say they just want peace. But sudden vulnerability can be a calculated re-entry attempt, especially when it appears right after your silence becomes consistent. This is why self-trust needs standards, not moods. Ask what pattern follows their softness, not how sweet it sounds. Ask whether accountability arrives with changed behavior. Ask whether your body relaxes or braces for the next twist. One of the strongest recovery tools is decision rehearsal. Before contact, choose your limit in advance. If they push past it, use the sense you already prepared. I'm not going to explain that again. Then end the exchange without a closing argument. Hang up, walk away, or leave the room. Nonverbal certainty often teaches people faster than words. Access changes when your exits become real. Self-trust deepens when your actions match your stated limits. Your nervous system starts believing you again. Then something subtle begins to change. You stop asking, "Am I overreacting?" and start asking, "What is this costing me?" That question is powerful because it returns the focus to impact. Gaslighters survive by keeping you fixated on intent. Intent can be denied forever. Impact leaves a trail in your body, your sleep, your peace. This is the part most people never say aloud. You may never get a clean ending. Some people will leave the story twisted to the end. Trusting yourself again means tolerating unfinished narratives. It means knowing what happened even when they keep performing innocence. It means no longer auditioning for your own reality. You become harder to manipulate when certainty stops being loud. Quiet certainty is harder to invade. You stop chasing the last word. You start protecting the first quiet signal inside you. You notice confusion faster, guilt slower, and pressure for what it is. That is recovery in motion. If this video helped you see your path clearly, hit the like button. It helps others find language for pain. Subscribe to Mind Over Them and turn on the bell. Every week, we decode patterns most people never name. In the comments below, share which moment hit closest to home. Your story might help someone trust themselves tonight. The next video on your screen builds directly from this lesson. Watch it while your clarity is still warm. You were never weak for getting confused. You were strong enough to survive distortion and still return to yourself.